Well, hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on episode 20 of the Apothecary Diaries. Oh my God, the last few episodes have been really, really good, really great, and one, how could you wait to come back from last week's episode and figure out what the heck's going to happen with Jinshi walking away with MaoMao in the distance? Like what how could you wait to find out what happens next, especially with Locken and how all this relationship is going to go crazy? And there's still the mystery about Suire and about the people that are poisoned. Like everything is still, the pieces are all connecting, but we haven't added everything up. So we still need to like tie all the strings together, which is what I feel these last 5 episodes are going to do before we're done with season 1. Seems legit. But the other thing is I actually am going, as I'm recording this, on a weekend trip, and I usually record Apothecary over the weekend sometimes, and I'm not going to be able to do that. So I had to record this a little bit earlier to be on time with my reactions. Now, because of that, we're going to talk about the book and everything, but I was not able to read any further. Sad days into The Last Eunuch of China. I do think I will be able to finish this book by the time we finish the season, though, so that's good. But I only have 3 chapters left anyway, so I'm nearing the end to begin with. So I'm sure by the end of season 1, we'll have finished this book, but not today, although we do have quite a few comments to talk about, and I have some things to show you that have not been featured in any of our Apothecary Diary videos. I've been saving these for a rainy day or a day when I couldn't catch up with the reading, and that is today. So I want to talk about some comments first, because there were a lot of really cool comments that I want to get to and reference before we begin. Anime Annie talked about how the cinematography for the new consort, way back in episode 14 when we saw her come through, into the palace is so damn beautiful. I absolutely adore the use of color and shadow. But while she has all of her attendants following her, in a way the whole scene makes me feel lonely. This is her entrance to her new home, and yet her husband, the Emperor, is nowhere to be seen. And I thought that was relevant to bring up because we haven't really focused on Lolan a lot. She just had the teaching session in episodes 14 and 15, and that was it. We haven't really focused on her since episode 15. And I think the story is intentionally doing that because I personally have a theory she's tied to all of this, and especially the assassination or near assassination of Jinshi. I think that personally, the Emperor and Jinshi, when they had that tea conversation back in episode 14, I feel like it was maybe code. And whenever the Emperor said, I need you to tend my garden, there is like a misogynistic underlying current with that. But it could also be code for Jinshi saying, I don't quite trust this new courtesan, this new consort, and I want you to keep an eye on her. And I feel like it could have that underlying, which maybe that's why he didn't meet her. Also, it gives much more precedence to the idea that he really liked Aduo. Doesn't care so much for this one. She's just maybe a political figure or taking the place of Aduo because that's what needs to happen for societal reasons. But you can definitely tell he probably doesn't care about her, and she does not care about him. So maybe likewise, I'm sure the feeling's mutual, but I'm glad Anime Annie pointed that out. Then Taoist Daedara said the way of how the new pure consort dresses represents Manchuria, which is the northern province. And that's why I think MaoMao made the comment of, oh, she's dressed like she's from the north, but she's from the south, which is, again, a little suspicious. There's something there that maybe needs to be expanded upon, but MaoMao has a tendency in this story to point out a deduction or make a statement or make a theory and then not follow through with it because she doesn't want to get involved. Right? Or she leaves that theory up to someone else to deduce. And that's where she goes to from there. So, but I thought that was really well to point out. So thank you, Terrorist. Then Mathilda Nightcore. I am going to save this. Mathilda Nightcore said, I don't know if someone's already told you about this, but there is an Apothecary Diaries mini anime series that was published on the Toho's official YouTube channel called MaoMao no Hitorigoto. Basically, there are shorts with tidbits of info about something seen in each episode with a little interaction in chibi forms of MaoMao and Jinshi, which sounds amazing. So, yes! Yes! There is an episode for each episode of the first season. So if you want to react to it after you've watched the first season, here's a link to it with the English subs. Thank you so much. I am so appreciative of that because, yeah, we're going to have a couple weeks in between season 1 ending on my channel and season 2 starting. So one of those weeks could be me going through all of these little shorts. I went to the YouTube video and saved it in my little watch later playlist so I could go back to it later. But it's like 38 minutes. That's like an episode. All the shorts compiled together is like 38 minutes. So that's what we're going to do. When season 1 is over, the following week, we'll just react to all these shorts. And it'll be a cute little fun, happy-go-lucky time before we start season 2. That will be so much fun. Genius. You're amazing. Mwah. Thank you so much. I love it. So thank you, Matilda Night Court, for doing that. You are amazing for recommending it. I didn't know about it, but I'm all for it. Sunray535 says the first Opium Wars, and this ties into the last eunuch of China that we've been reading, says the first Opium Wars occurred in the early 1800s, which British East India Company forced China to make opium trade legal because Britain was buying much more exports from China, such as silk and tea, but China wasn't interested in what Britain had to offer. Opium was Britain's solution to this imbalance. I believe the consequences of opium leaked into the early 1900s because of the first early 1800s and second mid-1800s opium wars. Sun Yat-sen and his peers experienced the consequences of it in the early 1900s. I am a huge fan of this concept called nonlinear history. It's something that I found that I had a teacher in grad school talk about, and I'm so intrigued by it. And it's not really what you think it is. Like nonlinear, of course, history is sequential, right? It happens in a chronological order. But I love this concept that things that happen at one point in time spiderweb and dominoes fall, and it leads to something like this over here has trajectories that go over here that you can't predict that come over here, and it makes our history so much more complicated, and it makes it so much more complex and more interesting to study. And so I love this idea that something that happened 100 years ago ties back around to something, and the effects of it we're seeing 100 years later. And it gives a lot more credence when people talk about how we need to preserve things now in our world because of the impacts later. And people are like, oh, you don't know that. And it's like, but we've seen it in history. And this is a great example of it. So I'm glad you said that, Sunray. That was really cool. Thank you for bringing that up. And then Kelvin486 said, Romania says, I'm not sure why Basin has a negative view of MaoMao, but I'm curious. My headcanon is that Jinshi just won't stop talking about her during their sparring matches. It's like when your friend starts dating someone new and literally every conversation you have with them for the next few weeks is about their significant other. I totally can see this, and Basin's over here being like, she's the one we're talking about. I like Basin though. He lives like Goshen with a thankless job of watching over MaoMao and Goshen watching over Jinshi. So what can we do? Anyway, so what I was going to show you all, since I don't have the book to look at this week because I didn't get a chance to read the chapters, is that the moderator for this series, Be Happy, back several months ago, sent me this lovely deck of cards for Apothecary Diaries. And they're Lomo cards. There's 92 of them. But they did this nice cool thing where they said that I cannot look at some of these cards until I'm caught up with season 1. So some of these cards are going to have to save till after season 1 to look at. But these cards that I have not looked at could be looked at and viewed. So I'm going to share them with you all and kind of point out some of my favorites if you were curious as to what these cards look like. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. MaoMao looks so cute and innocent here, but then you turn this over and yeah, I could see why Jinshi would be attracted to her. I could see why. She looks really beautiful there. Like, she looks so pretty. I get it. I get it. But then, you have that, and then you see her looking like a cat, and you're like, oh, okay. I did like this. These are the only two that I looked at beforehand. It is Basin and Li Shu. I don't know if Li Shu's awfully young. I don't want to ship her with anybody, but I kind of like this idea of Basin being like a protector for her and like a guard for her. I kind of think that's kind of cool. I guess maybe that's why they're together. Also, there's this really cool calico cat with MaoMao that's really super cute. Like that. A lot of these are like her like bandaging her arm. That dang bandage, Jinshi still don't know about it. Maybe he'll find out this time while she's unconscious. Oh, Li Hua looks really pretty. That one of her is really nice. Look at our couple. Look at them. I shipped them so hardcore. Yes. Oh, nice. Gyokyo. Love that. MaoMao, where she has her like delicious soup and salad. Like this is her leaving the Olive Garden the most satisfied customer. Aw, MaoMao in her little typical garb. I'm assuming Locken's not going to be involved in this. Oh my God! This one is one of my favorites. Okay, this one's one of my favorites. Jinshi's up there looking like, he looks like Tomoko from Ouran High School Host Club. And everybody else behind him like, sure. Poor Gaoshun. He's just, Gaoshun's face, if y'all can see it, he looks so depressed. He's just like, why? Why me? Then we got some MaoMaos. Oh, the hairpin scene, which is great. Oh my God. Jinshi trying to get like on her good side and she's like having none of it. Some more with the four of them. I love me some. Oh, this one's cute. Jinshi putting the little flower in her hair. That's adorable. Now, in some of these, her eyes look more purple like his than blue, which is really super cute. I like that. Ooh, I like him. He like has neon hair and like has some aquamarine undertones. I'm like, what? I don't know if I like Jinshi with no, the Jinshi has to have purple hair. That's the only way he's accepted. No, the other ones, I can't do it. And then there's a duplicate of her with the cat. Cat face is super cute. Yeah, she looks a little bit more young here than she did in the first picture, but still really pretty. And then, yeah, this one that I think this is from the promo that the streaming services use. That one, she looks gorgeous. I love her smile there. So good. Love it. This one looks like a fan artist or the mangaka did it, where Jinshi's like got his arm around her and she's like, whoa, sir, did I approve that? Cute. Cute. That one, her teeth. Anytime she's like having poison, she's having a great time. This looks like it from the manga. Jinshi just wants to love you, girl. And then, yep, we've had that one. Oh, that one. Oh, that one has paint on the other side. That's super cute. I like that one. I like that one where she's got the paint sticks and everything. Oh, and some of these are duplicates. Cute. Loving these. All right. And then, yep. Oh, that one's pretty with the winter theme. Nice. And then, yeah. That is gorgeous. Like, that's my favorite. She looks so good there. Yes, be happy. You are amazing for sending these. I love them. I am definitely excited to see these mystery ones. I'm assuming Locken is going to be, and maybe the Pure Consort and maybe Aduo are going to be some of them featured in these mystery cards. Or maybe there's some from the last episode of him carrying her. No big deal. It's fine. So, I'm so excited, y'all. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Yes. But we've talked enough, right? We've talked enough. We're going to get started here and see what we get. But we're going to start episode 20 of the Apothecary Diaries. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1. And let's go. Well. Oh, this was a good episode. This was a good episode. Look, I know that there are probably a lot of light novels out there for this series. And I know we're getting a season 2, but if MaoMao and Jinshi aren't endgame, what was the point? They have to be endgame. When Gaoshun was like, you need to settle down, Jinshi, so I can go visit my grandbabies. I'm like, then you better be hooking him up with MaoMao and getting this all set up, sir. Because I don't know who else you're expecting him to marry. Okay. We gotta talk about this episode. Oh my god, there was so much happening in this episode. I'm living for it. I love it. Whiteboard-kun is ready. So we're just gonna dive into it. I mean, look, Jinshi, MaoMao, Jinshi's already put you in his bed. He has accepted you. Girl, you're perfect for Jinshi. Jinshi likes being stepped on. You're perfect for him. And he's perfect for you because he's a lovely gentleman that is super kind and will probably grovel at your feet and do whatever you want to, but yet challenge you and make you a better person and hold you accountable and just, they're so good together. I love them. So, And if she's Locken's daughter, let's just put this out there. Because at this point, if we're looking at this, right? At this point, Jinshi, we know of, is at least with the Emperor, his brother or son. Now, from what we got out of this episode, it very much seemed like Jinshi kind of thinks he is the Emperor's brother, but he, like MaoMao, has entertained the idea that there's a possibility he could be his son, but then he's like, that seems ridiculous. I couldn't believe that. So they kind of have all just, the truth is out there in front of us, the audience, but all the characters are like, one, what good does it do us now? Right? What good does it do us? Aduo's gone. What good does it do us if Jinshi is his son rather than his brother? Because the outcome is still the same no matter what. At this point, Jinshi is the heir. Jinshi is the heir, whether he's the son or the brother, because there's no other male heirs. And he's the closest kin to the Emperor. So if something happens to the Emperor, as of this moment, Jinshi's gonna be the Emperor. And from how it sounds, Jinshi doesn't want to be the Emperor. He's like, no, that's just not cut out for me. I don't want that responsibility. He's like John Ralphio in Parks and Rec. He's like, I can't handle that responsibility. He just doesn't want it. And I don't blame him. I wouldn't want to be the Emperor in ancient China. That sounds great and all, but from what Jinshi has shown us, he does not seem like the type of guy that wants to have a bunch of consorts and a bunch of brides and be involved in this political strife. He just wants to go settle down with little old MaoMao and them solve mysteries. And I don't blame him. So he doesn't want that. So the solution to that problem is he's like, well, fine, bro. If you don't want to be Emperor, then you're going to tend my garden and let me get a male heir, and then you won't have to worry about it. And Jinshi's like, fair deal. So him and Gao Shun, because Gao Shun has been raising him alongside his family. So Gao Shun and Jinshi, and we're going to talk about these testosterone blockers, because I did a little bit of research. I dove down a rabbit hole after I got done with this episode, because I was like, wait, what magical? There's a lot of magical drinks being drank in this episode. And I was like, do we have any other things that we can tie this back with? So they have been drinking basically testosterone blockers to make them not have boners and to prevent them from having erections and to try to subdue, to make them seem more like eunuchs. That explains why he still has muscle mass. That explains what Gao Shun does as well. That explains a lot. And I could see some people being like, oh, well, he doesn't have facial hair. Here's the thing. One, yeah, the testosterone blockers would definitely stop the hair growth that one would have. But on the other hand, I know a lot of guys in real life that don't grow facial hair naturally. Doesn't matter about the testosterone. I know a bunch of guys that I have grown up with that they just don't grow beards. And they're like, it's not in the cards genetically. So, I mean, it very much could be that Jinshi just naturally has features that don't allow him to grow as much facial hair. Totally fine. Totally normal. So, yeah. So there's that. So then they're taking that testosterone blockers so that they can pretend to be eunuchs until a male heir is born. This is very dark and morbid humor, but man, if Li Hua's son had lived, what would this series have been like? What would this series have been like if Li Hua's son had lived? Because that really was the kickoff to all of this. So it's kind of insane. It's not really, you can't really point a finger at it, but honestly, if Li Hua's son had lived, then this would be a very different story. And it's crazy how the hands of fate have brought all of these things together. It's wild. So yeah. So until that male heir is born, Jinshi is pretending to be, we don't even know if his actual name is Jinshi. Jinshi is the name of him as a eunuch. So that may not even be his name. That was something that I was like, oh, well, now it makes more sense because Jinshi is just his name and he's posing as a 24-year-old eunuch that is over the palace. So here's the deal. Everybody thinks that the emperor's brother is this sickly man that doesn't appear very much, but he has his hair up when he appears for ceremonies and things like that. Okay, makes sense. And he lives in the outer palace, so, and he has his own place, so people don't see him all the time. So they see the Emperor's brother whenever they do and believe that it's him. But when he's not the Emperor's brother, he's posing as Jinshi, who's like this chief eunuch, and he's making himself seem like he's 5 years older than he actually is. So he's leading quite the double life. And MaoMao's like, well, but your age and everything doesn't match up with what my conjecture is, so okay, it's not any business of mine. Do I think at some point Jinshi will tell her his secrets? Yeah. It's just very frustrating. We have to wait for that to happen. I'm like, damn it, son of a bitch. So yeah. So with the consorts, we're going to talk about them and all of this. We've got that. We're going to talk about MaoMao over here and her situation. And then Suirei. Oh my God. Suirei is literally, she is the Moriarty to MaoMao's Sherlock. And I'm kind of all about it. I couldn't talk about it during the reaction. I was like, son of a bitch, I can't. I wanted to say so much during the reaction, and I was like, no, you don't have time. Things are happening. You have no time to talk about it. So we're going to talk about it now because I'm just like, So yeah. So we're going to put Suirei over here. We're going to put sweet little Suirei right here. The Moriarty. The Moriarty to her. I'm hoping my mic is acting weird. So we're going to hope that that's all. All right, we're back with that. My mic was having a red light flash, and I was like, what does that mean? So, yeah. So, we're going to talk about MaoMao and Suirei, the Moriarty and Sherlock. And Suirei got away. She got away. And I was like, no way. Are you kidding? I was like, okay, well, you knew she wasn't going to be dead. They weren't just going to kill her off unless she was just a big red herring. And I was like, but it seems like there was too much setup for her to be a red herring. And I was like, come on now. And then when you find out that she got away, it's like, oh, so she's still at large. I think she's connected to Lolan for sure. So I think that there's a connection to Lolan. And we're going to talk about that for various reasons. But I'm so in love with where this series is taking us. And we only have 21, 22, 23, we have 4 episodes left. I don't think we're going to resolve it. We might resolve everything in those 4 episodes, but I think there's going to be a lot left to speculate on, and we'll just have to wait and see. But anyway, it would be interesting now that we're talking about, I know we're going to talk about Gyokyo later. It would be interesting if we kind of like did a full circle back to the first episode where the season ends with both Gyokyo and Li Hua finding out they're pregnant, and then we're back to where we started. Like, are either of them going to have sons? Are they both going to have sons? And then go from there so that Jinshi can get off the hook and not be heir to the throne, so he can marry MaoMao and they can have their garden together. I'm not asking for much, show. So I love that we tie in the ED to this moment, because in the ED, Jinshi is like sitting on that little edge there of his bed with his blanket wrapped angstily over him, and he's very sad. And here we have MaoMao and like the sandalwood incense, and she's like, it's his bedroom. She's like, why am I here? And then Suirei, I love this Suiren. I get their names confused because they're so close. I love that Suiren is like, she like wields an iron whip in this fortress with Jinshi and Gaoshun. I love that she's just like, all right, get dressed. There are people coming, and like she's very prim and proper. And then I love that she just is telling MaoMao, like she keeps MaoMao in line. And I love that about her because somebody has to. And she's the one that would have all this. So 15 stitches. That's a lot. And I like that Suiren is also kind of like, she kind of gets on to MaoMao a little bit like, hey, you're causing a lot of issues for Jinshi, and he's my little baby boy that I helped raise. So watch it. Right? I also think it's interesting that the glass that's being served is like the one that Locken gave them. So that's interesting. And she's like, you need to get dressed so they can come in. And of course, MaoMao's like, well, I am still one of the servants. So, you know, just because I got injured. I do like there's this little callback to reality that, yeah, yes, you woke up in the prince's bed. You've been treated by him. It's very romantic, but you're still a worker. You got to get dressed. Like, this ain't Pretty Woman. So, yeah. And then Basin. So now we understand why Basin looks so much like Gaoshun. It's his frickin' son. His youngest son, by the way. So Basin is his son. Literally a babysitter. And Basin and Jinshi are both 19. Interesting. I feel like both. Oh, my microphone is being so weird. Why is it turning on and off? That's weird. Hopefully y'all can hear me. But anyway, I don't know why it's being weird like that. Odd. Off and on. Okay. Maybe it'll be weird. Maybe it won't be weird. Hopefully you all can hear me and it's fine. I don't know why it's being strange like that. Anyway, the USB maybe has a little bit of a connection issue. Maybe. Hopefully it's not going to be weird. Okay. Anyway, so it makes sense now that Basin is, I'm going to turn it and then have it that way so maybe I can see if it's not going to be, yeah, there we go. We're going to turn it just a little bit and that way maybe I can keep track of it. Okay, good. So Basin, it all makes sense now. He's Gao Shun's youngest son. Gao Shun's a freaking grandpa. Although Gao Shun doesn't look that old, but this is China in like 1800, not current times. So theoretically, if Basin had a kid when he was 19 and Basin's his youngest son, he could have had a kid when he was 18. Maybe he has like, 2 sons. And if that son was 19 and had a kid just now, then he could be like in his late 30s, which is terrifying because I'm in my late 30s. I'm not in my late 30s. I'm in my mid 30s, but still the concept of me having a grandchild is terrifying. And so I'm like, Gao Shun already having a grandchild? What? But if he had a kid when he was 17 or so, it's not unheard of. So, okay. But yeah, Basin, it makes a lot more sense why they're so together all the time. All of this. I want to meet Gao Shun's wife now. And honestly, from reading the books, from reading The Last Eunuch of China, it wasn't unreasonable at the time, as we've learned throughout the course of this series, for eunuchs to have wives and children. And they could have been castrated after having a wife and kids. So it would not have been unheard of for Gao Shun to have had Basin and then get castrated. So the idea that if anybody knows Basin is his son, sure, that still could be within the realm of possibility and then be eunuchs. So it's not unheard of. But I like that MaoMao's like, I don't deserve to be yelled at. She's like, just stop it. I like that Basin's like, why are we doing all this? So, and of course, Jinshi, again, he is sitting there wearing like noble clothes. And I'm like, girl, you still don't get it. You still don't get it, girl. But I mean, if she thinks that if he's going by Jinshi and going by a different age, it does make sense why she'd be confused. But I'm like, I'm waiting for the day when she figures out who he is. I'm waiting for the day. And so then she explains everything and how we led up to this point. And I like that as she's explaining the story, everyone's piecing together all of the pieces, right? All these incidents was intentionally caused by someone. So the thing about it is, Suirei is our culprit. But I like the idea. I love the idea that you have MaoMao working as the Sherlock for like Jinshi as Lestrade and for like, Scotland Yard, which is the Emperor. And I love the idea that you have that. And then you have Suirei working as the Moriarty for Lowland possibly. The big question is who's Milverton? That's the question. Is Locken Milverton? Is Lowland? That's the question. Like, who's Milverton in all of this? That's where we're at, right? So I love this idea that Suirei and MaoMao are our 2 apothecary rivals. I love it. I love it. Because it's like, MaoMao needs a rival in this, right? Jinshi's not her rival, he's her help. And the Emperor, honestly, is not her rival either. And then you have these outside forces, which could be her rivals and have been in the past, but every Sherlock needs a Moriarty. Jinshi's not a Moriarty. Not at all. He's a Lestrade, if anything. And so it's like, okay, well then who, or a Watson if you want to go that route, I guess. But then it's like, then who could it be? And Suirei, love it. I love the idea that Suirei like dresses down and the concept of how her and MaoMao both use or don't use makeup to alter their appearances and how they both of them know their femininity and their sexuality and how to weaponize it, right? MaoMao chooses not to weaponize it, but she knows it is very weaponizable, right? From growing up in the brothel. Suirei weaponized her sexuality and got that pharmacist to dote on her and make it to where he didn't do the autopsy on her. And it's like, boom, like that. I was like, yes, awesome. This episode's great. So I'm just loving it. So like the tools they find out, someone had asked to remake the tool with the pillar using the metal that we know melted from the sunlight from the lead episode, which I'm like, yes, I'm glad that all tied together. And they're like, what kind of metal would do that? And they're like, well, we saw in episode 16 exactly what kind of metal did that. And they're like, well, did the metal worker, was he part of the conspiracy? And I like that MaoMao instantly is like, no, I don't think the metal worker is part of the conspiracy. He was just someone hired to do a job. And that's all there is to it. So the big question is, so now this all makes a little bit more sense because we have with Locken, we talked last episode about it, but Locken basically he found out that the man that was working on the new piece died or could have been killed off after he made it so that he wouldn't talk. We don't know. I like that MaoMao says we don't know how he died. We don't know if it was an accident or if it was premeditated. I'm like, again, it's conjecture. We can't know for sure. But if Suirei killed off the metal worker so that he couldn't tell who asked him to make it, that would be pretty convenient. It's pretty convenient that he died and he can't talk to him about anything or reveal who it was. It's awfully convenient. That's the situation. And my thing is, I feel like Locken found out parts of this, but maybe possibly because he's tied with the military, he couldn't act. So instead he used MaoMao to figure it out. And so now it makes more sense that Locken necessarily could have figured out that the metal worker died, and he could have figured out that it could have been an entire situation where he was framed or murdered. But because Locken is connected to the military, he's kind of got his hands tied. And if he's connected to the military and trying to figure out if Lolan is involved, well, then he doesn't want to out himself or get himself caught up in it, because if you reveal your hand too soon before you figure out the whole game, then you could lose. So he did kind of use MaoMao to find stuff out, which is a choice and something he did. And then apparently it would make more sense because of this episode compared with last episode, why he was in such shock, because he didn't expect MaoMao to get involved as she did or as hurt as she did, or to get as caught up and tied up in the tangle of the Emperor's brother / son as she has. So, yes. So there's still that. But what I was going to say is this could all work out in the end, y'all, because Locken is military, right? He's a military man. He has authority. He's a weirdo and a slime bag, as Jinshi notes ever so calmly. But he does have authority. He does have some earned nobility. So if his daughter married the Emperor's brother, it's not too unheard of. It's not too unlikely. Stranger things have happened. She technically has some authority in her background, so she's not a total commoner. Now, of course, there's the idea of like her parentage, like if she's the wife of a concubine or a courtesan, it's like, is she a bastard child? What do you do with that? Quote unquote bastard child. What do you do with that? That opens up another can of worms. But I could totally see Locken wanting to adopt her officially. And if she was officially adopted, then she'd have his name, and then she would be able to probably marry Jinshi because of that earned nobility. Now, the complicated part of that is that MaoMao wants nothing to do with him. So it's like, even if he tried to adopt her, she'd probably be like, no, I don't want to. And then it would just cause further angst for Jinshi, because Jinshi's like, the one way she could be with him would require her to acknowledge a man that she absolutely loathes. And it's like, well, what do we do about that? And it's like, But it is possible. I do like that this series has opened up the door that, yeah, you want your Jinshi and MaoMao ending together? It could happen. It could theoretically be a thing. She's just got to jump through some hoops that she doesn't want to. But that's all. But I feel like this series, we're way too ahead of that, right? We're way too far off for that to even be a thing. Now, I am sure if you read the light novel that you were as surprised as could be when some of these things happened. And I love this series. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy and I look forward every week to this series. But I love a good mystery and I love figuring out things. And it can be frustrating when you don't quite connect the dots and someone has to tell you what the dots were. And you're like, ah, son of a bitch, I wanted to figure that out myself. But okay. This series, this episode, I was like, oh, I mean, the OP with the coffin, the moment we went to the coffins, I was like, oh, okay, the woman rising up from the coffin is Suire. Suire faked her death. We've seen it happen in Sherlock Holmes before. There are ways, there's drugs that let you do that. Like Mandrake lets you do like what we're talking about here. And then we had the White Morning Glories. So we'll get into that in a second. But I was like, oh, the coffin's revealing that it's her and that's how it did it. So I was kind of a little mad at the OP because I was like, I wish they hadn't shown that, because it's like, where else is a coffin scene going to come into play except this episode? And I was like, oh, and you instantly know. The other thing was when we go back to the metal worker who has the equipment and we see the fishbowl and they're like, please build this using the special metal. And they look up, it's Suire with their hair pulled back. Them eyebrows, them bushy ass eyebrows and them eyes, it's them. I was like, we didn't need to see that. I was like, the show gave it away and connected the dots for us. And that's fine. It was just like, okay, show. But she's like, anyway, the secret of the easily melting metal vanished with him until Locken had her solve it and figure it out. So Locken's been helping behind the scenes. He's just doing it in a very slimy way, which seems very in character for him. So, okay, sure. But yeah, and so she's like, well, if the ceremony had continued, then Jinshi would have died. And then, of course, she's like, well, who's this man and how is he so noble? Like, what's... And, of course, she's like, well, I don't need to worry about it. And I'm like, damn it! She's like, oh, knowing the truth would just get me in more trouble, which she's not wrong. But I'm like, girl, I want you to know the truth so you can at least know and not be in the dark. Come on, girl. Ugh. I'm rooting for you. Anyway, so she gets to take some more bandages off. She's just down to one. And that's when Lee Haku shows up. I like that Lee Haku just goes to her and they have this friendship. Now, he says that she died. And that, you know, when the guy entered the room, she had poisoned herself. And he's like, but she's been confirmed dead. I was like, the moment that they're like, oh, they're going to cremate her corpse tomorrow, coffin and all, I'm like, this is all happening very suddenly. And the fact that nobody's questioning it any further, they're just like, it's like when the woman like threw herself off into the moat and they were like, well, end of that story. It is kind of a commentary, I guess, in a way, about these women and how expendable they are, because this was an assassination attempt on the emperor, as far as anybody knows, on the emperor's brother. Like, that's huge. An assassination attempt. And they're just going to chalk it off to a crazy apothecary lady, a crazy court lady. And that's all they're going to say? Like she was turned down by Jinshi, so she decided to kill him? For something that premeditated and that complex and that elaborate, for them to just be like open shut case because, well, we found the culprit, I'd be investigating that a little bit more if I were them. But it's interesting though, right? And so that's when MaoMao's like, I need to know. She's like, is that really it? Was Suire the type of person to commit suicide? No. Was she behaving apathetic and unemotional because she knew she had no future? No, she was testing MaoMao. Yeah, she was being like, are you going to be the Moriarty to my Sherlock? Are you going to be the little short gremlin to my tall ass Amazon? I'm like, yes. And her saying she's going to play, like, and I love the concept of Suire being this calm, cool, collected presence. And MaoMao, who can get riled up and be kind of manic. Like, it's so perfect. I'm like, yes. Give me female Sherlock and Moriarty. I need this in my life. Yes, please. I love it. I wondered what the thing hanging from her ceiling was, but there's herbs and stuff hanging, so I thought for a second it was going to be a clue. Like Suire had left her a little satchel on a string to be like, here's your next clue, MaoMao, to what I'm about to do. Like, you know, very Moriarty-like. But no. And she's like, I'm going to be, everything she said is like, it all makes sense. Like her playing the morning glories, looking for the resurrection medicine. Like she was literally dropping clues like a musician drops a new album, waiting for MaoMao to pick it up. And she did. And I'm like, yes, please. So of course she goes to Jinshi and immediately asks for the request. MaoMao is in her villain era and I'm living for it. I love that she is. Here's the scary part about it all, because I do think Locken is a slime bag. I do think he's slimy and very like just sinister at times. She has a lot of the same qualities as him. And I think maybe Loman noticed, because I think Loman was like trying to keep her in check growing up, because he's like, I know your dad and I know you're probably going to be a little bit like him, whether you want to or not. So we're going to try to rein this in. And so the idea of her wanting, like she was so excited to go to the morgue and check out the body. She was so ready for it. And he's like, why are you smiling? And she's like, goo! So then them going in, and yeah, the one pharmacist, he got played. She literally used him. So she talked about Thornapple being growing, and it looks like a white morning glory, but it's used as an anesthetic. And she's like, yeah, it can make people seem like they're in a coma, but really it just knocks them out for a while and then they wake back up. Right? Makes them show all the symptoms. I love that she just like knocks open the coffin and then they realize that the woman inside is not Sui Ray. And Jinshi's like, oh, what do we do then? And so, of course, she's like, you got played. You didn't do an autopsy on the corpse because Sui Ray knew that you liked her. And I also like that when he lunges at her, Gaoshin stands in between them and is like, no. Everything makes sense now. Gaoshin being so fatherly, being this big, strong source of comfort. I'm like, and plus, now we know that Gaoshin has gotten it. Not only can Gaoshu get it, he has gotten it. I'm like, girl, I want to meet your wife, hold her hand, and go, you lucky woman. Jinshi's too young for me. I'm rooting for him in MaoMao. I am vicariously, voyeuristically wanting to watch them and their love blossom. But Gaoshun is my age, probably. Girl, here for it. Give me some Gaoshun lovin'. I need to meet this wife. I need to know her story. She may look like Basin, because she must have like the teal hair and the brown eyes, because that is not what Gaoshun has. So MaoMao's like, well, the only fault of the doctor is being tricked and not keeping track of the drugs properly. And so then Jinshi's like, so somebody was going to fake the body, and then what do we do? And they found the coffin where Sui Ray got out of it. And she's like, there's a drug that can make a person appear dead. And yeah, it's definitely, I feel like it's the go-to of mystery novelists. It's like the Sherlock go-to drug. It can kill a person and seemingly resurrect them later. I've heard thornapple and pufferfish are used as ingredients. And the one guy that was poisoned from a few episodes back, if you recall, had been eating pufferfish. Because MaoMao was excited because it was poisonous. And she's like, oh, so we now know that I'm sure Sui Ray had access to not only the thornapple she's been growing, but the pufferfish from tending to him. So that all is tying together and making sense. I love it. So then she goes over there and she's like, Gaoshin, can you investigate the coffins? And that's when they find the one. And they're like, if the replacement corpse had been burned, it would have been a complete victory. But she's like, not on my watch. This is her Sherlock moment. Her Sherlock evil laugh. I am in love with MaoMao when she gets chaotic gremlin like this. I love it. She's like, you could have gotten away with it, Sui Ray, but you just didn't. But no, she's like, you're not getting away with it. No. And Jinshi is like, what? Jinshi, you are a lawful good sir, but MaoMao is chaotic good, and I don't know if you're ready for her chaos. I don't know if you can handle it, sir. Maybe you can. You might be the only man that can handle it, but she's like, if she's alive, I want to meet her. And she's like, I don't want to arrest her. I was like, yes! MaoMao's like, I don't want to arrest her. That intellect that allowed her to make so many crimes look like accidents. The courage she had to pull it all off. And the nerves of steel to bet her own life to trick us all. See, that's the thing. Sui Ray having the cunning, The cutting to make it look like an accident. MaoMao's like, I could probably have done the same. I could have done it. She said the courage that it took for her to pull it off. She's like, I could have done that. Probably. But then I think what gets MaoMao is most of all the nerves. The nerves to bet her life. I feel like this is the moment that MaoMao is going to go down. Because MaoMao, up until now, she has played it safe. And MaoMao's like, no, I'm just a servant girl. I don't want to step out of line. I don't want to use conjecture. I just need evidence. And I'm just here to like, just present the information. But if it's not completely true, Sui Ray has like scratched that cat's chin and like scratched her belly and been like, oh, come on and play the game. And it's like, ah! And MaoMao's like, you bet your life to trick us all and you got away with it. And she's like, but no. She's like, I want to find you and I want to bring you in and I want to know how you made that medicine. And the fact that she's like, you were right in front of me on that hill, taunting me. She's like, a person like that dying soon would be such a loss. That moment where she said that is a lock-in line. I was like, your father would say the same thing. And I know the implications are different, but I'm like, oh, ho, 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 ho. And the way she smiles, I'm like, that looks like her father too. And then her laughing, she's like, medicine to bring people back to life. She will teach me how to make it. I'm like, oh my God. Jinshi's like going to walk in and MaoMao's going to have her tied up with like a whip. And she's like, oh, hi. He's like, oh, just a normal Wednesday. So, oh my God. I love that she just has this maniacal laugh. And then she remembers that there's other people in the room that are like, and she's like, oh, pardon me. Jinshi wouldn't survive a night with MaoMao in that mode. Would not survive. Let's be clear. I'm rooting for him, but I don't know if he can handle her. Like Destiny's Child is playing, Bootylicious is going on. She's like, I don't think you can handle it. She's like, oh, by the way, my leg's bleeding. Those wounds reopened. So can we go stitch that back up? And Jinshi's like, are you freaking kidding me? So yeah. So then what makes me think that Sui Ray is connected to Lolan is the next moment we have one of the ladies walking in and talking with her. And she's instantly like, so I'm like, I can't imagine. But then there's Jinshi. So we have this conversation with Jinshi and Gaoshun. And Jinshi's like thinking about taking the medicine as he's looking angstily outside the window. We ended up taking care of the Sui Ray incident in secret. Many things remain unclear about Court Lady Sui Ray, who's now posing as a man. So let's get down to business to defeat the Huns. But she's out there posing as a man. Now, what we know about her is that she, according to the doctor, she was backed by his teacher. So she came in with the pharmacist's teacher and has a mysterious past. Oh, imagine that. That all seems to add up. She just mysteriously popped onto the scene. He took note of her talents a few years ago and brought her on as an adopted daughter. So yeah, so basically she like snuck her way in years ago. Like this is what this tells me is that this entire thing, if Lolan is involved, this entire incident has been premeditated and planned for years. She took note and got involved with the pharmacist and let him take her under his wing years ago. So she's not related to Locken, like I thought, unless I don't think she's his nephew, but whatever. But she got taken in and she's been working here. Like this has all been like planned in advance, it seems. And not much is known about her past before then. And so Jinshi's like, this is going to be a long haul investigation. And I'm like, that's why we have a season 2. I feel like Sui Ray is going to be on the loose for season 2, if I'm going to be guessing. I hope she is. I love it. So then Gaoshun comes in and he's like, I helped Zhao Mao get home. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry to trouble you. And he's like, we can't let her wounds open up again. Yeah, he's like, we need to take better care of her. And he's like, it's not just her wound that worries me. There's nothing matter with Locken the weirdo. I love that Jinshi is he's caring for MaoMao. He's like, he wants to look out for her, because he knows that not only, she saved his life, but also he has recognized there's clearly some issues between her and Locken. There's clearly something underneath the surface there. He's like, he looked like a ghost when he's like, it's clear that he's her father. But given her attitude, there's some issues there. Like, she doesn't want to recognize him. And so then he's thinking to himself, he's like, and they're like, we're going to go back to the rear palace. And he's like, yes. So, there seems to be no problem. It's the same as always. And he's like, meaning that it tastes bad. So him holding his nose without taste, they're like, you don't have to drink it if you don't like it. And he's like, well, if I want to try to be a eunuch, I have to. It makes you look young when you hold your nose in public. So he's like, I have to pose as something very particular. He's like, I have to have refined mannerisms, a heavenly smile, and a voice like honey. And he's like, that, the 24-year-old man who became a eunuch when the rear palace became the current emperor's 5 years ago. That's Jinshi. So, 5 years he has been a eunuch in the main palace for 5 years. So for Jinshi, we know that right now he's actually 19, which, okay, that tells us that I thought that he was like 17 or 18 when the series started. So like a year or so has passed, which makes sense with how Gyokyo's daughter looks like she's a year or two old. She looks like she's a 2-year-old. So 2 years have passed since the start of season 1. So by that logic, he was around 17 years, which was 3 years. So he has been taking these. Here's the thing. He might not have been taking the testosterone blockers for that long, but he started when he was 14 with this job posing as a 19-year-old. Okay. Well, for a while when you're 14, a 14-year-old, usually I feel like boys mature a lot later in life. Like, I feel like girls hit puberty between like 11 and 14, and guys are like between 12 and 16 when they hit puberty. So he could have been a late bloomer or he could have looked older than he was by the time he was 14, and they passed him off as a 19-year-old eunuch. But you could pass him off as a 19-year-old eunuch because if he's a eunuch, then him being more androgynous or less masculine would make sense. So that could have been the case. And then as he got older and puberty did start to hit, then that's when he started taking the testosterone blockers to make himself seem like he was still a eunuch. And he's like, yeah, from the day I decided to wear this mask, I've been drinking this medicine to suppress my manhood every day. So 5 years ever since he decided to wear the mask. So basically 5 years ago, I'm just going to say his brother, the emperor, but we all know that it's his dad. I'm just going to say brother because saying brother, father over and over again is a lot. So his brother became the emperor 5 years ago. And at that point, Jinshi decided that, okay, my brother's the emperor. I don't want to be the heir. So I've got to help my brother find a way to get a wife, get a son, then I don't have to worry about things. Jinshi wants to be Prince Harry. He does! He wants there to be a Prince William so he can go off and be Prince Harry. That is literally what is happening. He's like, I don't want this mess. And I don't blame him. So he's like, I got to find a way to get my brother an heir so I can go off and do my thing and y'all can have your palace, your lineage, whatever. I want to go do my thing, so I'm going to help you. So he decided at age 14 he did not want to be emperor. And this was the mask he donned. Now, and he's like, and then Gaoshin says, like, that's going to make you impotent one day. It's like, okay. Now, I did look up. I said I dove down the rabbit hole, and I did, in fact, dive down the rabbit hole. I wanted to try to find, like, what were there plant-derived anti-androgen therapies, because anti-androgen meaning like testosterone blockers, things like that, hormone therapy. Because I mean, there's a lot of modern day equivalents, but like what would have been realistically something to have used back then. And so it says, I did find from the National Health Organization, they did say that there's an ever increasing demand for complementary therapies, or those that are perceived as being more natural. The presence of androgenic chemicals in plants, herbs, and foodstuffs provides an alternative to modern synthetic pharmaceuticals. It's commonly believed that there are fewer adverse effects of such alternative therapies. So they talk about things that could be used. They actually talk about like one being licorice, talking about licorice as a substance from a sweet root that in a clinical trial in 2004, it said they found that licorice root significantly decreased testosterone levels in female volunteers. So women taking daily licorice root experienced a drop in total testosterone levels after 1 month and returned to normal after discontinuation. So I guess if you eat a lot of licorice, you could get lower testosterone. Fair enough. There's also white peony. It says Chinese peony is widely grown ornamental plant with several hundred selected cultivars. Many of the cultivars have double flowers that with the stamens modified into additional petals. White peony have been important in traditional Chinese medicine and have been shown to affect human androgen levels in vitro. In a 1991 study in the American Journal of Chinese Medicine, Takeuchi et al. Described the effects of painoniflorin, a compound found in white peony that inhibited the production of testosterone and promoted the activity of aromatase, which converts testosterone into estrogen. To date, there has been no studies that translate or explore the clinical effects. So that's a possibility, the white peony. There also is reishi. Red reishi, commonly known as lingji in Chinese, is a mushroom thought to have many health benefits. In a research study exploring the anti-androgenic effects of 20 species of mushrooms, reishi mushrooms had the strongest action in inhibiting testosterone. That study found that reishi mushrooms significantly reduced levels of 5-alpha reductase, preventing conversion of testosterone into more potent DHT. High levels of DHT are a risk factor for conditions such as benign prostatic hypertrophy, acne, and baldness. So you're going to keep your hair thanks to the reishi. They also talked about green tea as well as spearmint being different things that could affect testosterone, black cohosh, chaste trees, often known as chaste berries, saw palmetto. There's basically some natural herbs and extracts that you can use in this sense to do this. So the side effects of taking these anti-androgens are that you have a lower sex drive, which would make sense. You have increased risk of depression. So the ED being Jinshi themed and him crying at the end. Well, now there's an explanation of that too. Also elevated liver enzymes. So you better watch your liver. I don't know if I'd be drinking a whole lot, Jinshi. Reduced facial and body hair. Higher risk of developmental issues for a fetus if you take them during pregnancy, but Jinshi doesn't have to worry about this. This is not an Omegaverse. And then hepatitis, so watch out for that. Liver injury, erectile dysfunction, which Gaoshun brings up, diarrhea, breast tenderness, hot flashes, menstrual irregularity, which I'm assuming if you're a woman taking them, and skin rashes, blah, blah, blah. So when Jinshi says it could make you impotent one day or sterile, that is in fact a side effect that could happen. My thing is, if he's been taking them for 5 years, there's a very good chance that he could be impotent. Which I've watched a BL that involves a character who's impotent, and it still worked out well for him. So is Jinshi like Domeki? Kind of, maybe. But but yeah, so there's a good chance that, and here's the thing, maybe Jinshi doesn't want kids. Maybe, honestly, if I was the member of a royal family and I wanted out, then I wouldn't want to have children. Because then there's, especially in this type of society and culture where his kids could be up for being, heir to the throne. They could be sold off. There could be pressures politically for him to do stuff with his kids. If I were Jinshi, I'd be like, I'm fine with being impotent. I'm fine with not having kids. And honestly, I think that would make it perfect for him to end up with MaoMao, because then the two of them, I'm sure she'd be fine with that. and maybe one day he wouldn't be impotent and it would be working out. But, I'm okay with that. But they also said on here, because I looked up, I'm like, can you reverse the effects of testosterone blockers? Yes, they can be reversible. So if you stop taking them, you can. It's kind of like there's a birth control. My friend takes the birth control that's the shot, like the injection, the vaccine, and basically it stops your periods and it stops everything. And you take it like every 3 to 6 months. I think it's every 3 months you get this vaccine, and it basically stops your period. It's a form of birth control. However, if you use it for prolonged periods of time, like the doctor told her, was like, hey, if you use this for a long time, which she's used it for like decades now, they're like, when you stop, if you ever decide to have kids, it may take years before you're able to get back on a regular cycle and for it to work again, if at all. And it's like, oh. So that's kind of the same deal, I'm sure, with this as well. So I thought that was an interesting deep dive. And then he's like, well, the same with you. So Gao Xun's taking it as well, and he's not actually a eunuch. And Gao Xun's like, well, hey, he's like, my children are adults now, and I even have another grandchild. He's like, I ain't worried about having other kids. This is fine. He's like, I'm totally chill with this. And Jinshi's like, oh, a grandchild from your older son? And he's like, my youngest son is ready to get married too, but he's like, and then he's like, Basin, he's only 19. And Gao Xun's like, yes, 19, just like you. And that's when Jinshi's like, now listen, he's like, Jinshi the eunuch is 24. Your wife is telling me to find, your look is telling me to find a wife and end this work. And I'm like, well, I'm sure MaoMao would be perfect for Jinshi. And I hope that maybe Jinshi is just looking into that from that look. But I'm like, come on, Gao Xun, get MaoMao and Jinshi hooked up. I think that would be a great idea. I would be 100% for it. Please and thank you. He's like, you just want me to end this work. And then Gao Xun's like, I would like to spend time with my grandchild, actually. So if we can hurry up and get this. He's like, I'll do my best. He's like, our work here is to make sure we get a male heir. That's what we got to do. So Lolan, she walks out in this looking very Victorian outfit. She looks freaking gorgeous, but she looks like she's from Pride and Prejudice as she walks out here. And she's like, well, hey. And so he's like, what a great outfit. And she seems not affected by him at all, which is interesting. What if Suirei and Lolan, like I said, what if they're in a relationship? And that's why she's not affected by Jinshi either. He can't affect her because she's a lesbian. So that's what it is. Maybe, possibly. So the Emperor does visit Lolan a lot, but he doesn't find her very appealing because she changes her styles. She's confusing. The Emperor's like Scott Pilgrim and she's like Ramona Flowers. She's fickle and changes her hair every 2 weeks. I do like the fact that she's very fashionable and influenced by lots of different cultures and styles. I love that for her. Go Lolan. That's great. I love that it looks like there's Indian fashion there. I just love all the flair. It's beautiful. And he can't tell who she is every time he visits her and he gets confused. The way that he's just like, he's such a bro. The Emperor is such a bro. God, give him a Miller Lite. Just give him Miller Lite on game day. He can't stand her because she doesn't look the same. She's not wearing the same Ugg boots and Under Armour shirt. What? I love it. It's great. And she's just like plebeian. Still, he visits her every 10 days. And so anyway, we find out Lolan's dad is an important high-ranking official who was the previous Empress Dowager's favorite. Okay. So let's complicate this even more. So before we find out that Lolan, we'll put her up here, Lolan's dad was a favorite of the Empress. Now, favorite, does that mean like boy toy, and she's like, hey, old friend? Or was she like one of her favorite friends or colleagues? I mean, looking at Empress Shishi from this book, this woman had a lot of power and she did whatever the F she wanted. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Empress Dowager was just like, oh, I like him. So yeah, your daughter wants to come be in the palace? Sure thing. Oh, why not? Right? So he needs to be careful around her. The emperor's like, this girl has some political ties, and this man that's her dad has ties to my mom. There's a lot going on. So, in terms of lacking appeal, Li Shu is the same. Thank goodness that Jinshi recognizes that his grandpa was a bit slimy for having a little bit of a affinity for young underage girls. Glad that Jinshi's like, that was gross. And I'm glad that the emperor, who is the distasteful emperor's son, also is like, gross. So good. So I like the idea that Li Shu is safe. Li Shu girl is safe. We are good for you, Li Shu. Good for you. And so then we don't mention Li Hua. Li Hua is not mentioned in this, which is, she's just pretty and there, and she's beautiful and smart, don't get me wrong, but she doesn't have like any political ties or anything tied to like the former emperor like Li Shu does. She's just pretty and there to possibly have an heir. Gyokyo does have some political ties, and she actually, I can't believe that the little baby that Gyokyo, the girl that is Gyokyo's daughter, is like related to Jinshi. I'm like, that's like his half sister. Insanity. These dramas with these royal families. Everybody's related to everybody. So she currently has a daughter. So right now the emperor's only two children are theoretically Jinshi and this girl. And if you notice, the girl looks exactly like Gyokyo. So I'm just saying, the emperor's genetics are not very strong. They are recessive as F, because so far, Aoduo and Gyokyo's kids both look like them, not like the emperor. So, common denominator, just saying, which is good. So they leave, and then he doesn't intend to lay a finger on Li Shu. Good. Great. So the Empress Dowager, who gave birth to the current emperor when she was just a girl, who, now look, the Empress Dowager, who's very beautiful, she does kind of look like Jinshi. Now that I'm looking at her, now that we're seeing them all side by side, she does, like the way that her eyes are set and her eyebrows. I mean, Jinshi looks a lot like Aoduo. Don't get me wrong. But now that I'm actually looking at her face on, because this is like the first time we've seen her, like face to face, full on, I think, since the garden party episode, she does, like her hair color similar to Jinshi's. She does not look like the emperor at all. So the emperor clearly looks like the former emperor, Jinshi's grandpa. And the Dowager Empress, she does look like Jinshi, which makes sense because that's his grandmother. So if you were trying to tell me that he is the emperor's brother, yeah, I guess I kind of see it, because I could see where somebody would be like, no, he looks like his mom / actually his grandma. No, that all makes sense. That's kind of cool to see that connection and to see it. So it says she was just a girl and she gave birth to another child some 10 odd years later. Well, you mean like 17 years later. Mm-hmm. Yep. And so then at the time, the doctor spent all his time tending to the empress. Yep. And then it shows her with the baby. So the birth took place without an issue. But that's the baby that was swapped out and given the honey. But the concubine gave birth around the same time. Uh-huh. And then we see the young emperor there, who kind of, you know what? Now that we see the emperor, he hasn't aged very well. But now that we see him when he's like younger and we see baby Jinshi, I can see a little bit of Jinshi there. I can see a little teeny bit there. She had no attention, and she had the loss of her uterus. So the current emperor's firstborn child was soon lost after. Mm-hmm. And he's like, if that child had survived, well. And I love that he shrugs off. He's like, that's a silly delusion. So I like that both Jinshi and MaoMao are like, well, Jinshi would be the heir, but that seems silly. Honestly, Jinshi is currently the heir regardless, so it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter in the long run. It does make me wonder if Jinshi, since this has made a point of Jinshi thinking that he's the emperor's brother, and just that the idea that Aoduo is his mom, the conjecture, it does make me wonder about the night that she left, like him crying, but maybe he viewed her as like a mother figure, or maybe he was just, maybe that was his delusion and he was drunk, and so the conjecture he had took over and that caused him to start crying, or maybe he's just, maybe he's a weepy drunk. Could be that too. But there is the idea that, so Aduo, she could not have any children. No more kids. Jinshi was her one and only. Now, with that being said, that would explain why she had to go, because Jinshi's like, we need an heir and we're gonna have to get you out of here, but you get a nice penthouse, so have fun. And so he's like, he just needs to make himself a new prince, which is such a creepy way to say it. Make himself a new prince. So Jinshi's like, he just needs to get an heir that's not me. And then after that, we're fine. So now, theoretically, Gyokyo missing her period would be a sign, if she's not feeling well too, would be a sign that she's possibly pregnant. Her lunar cycle, meaning her period, has stopped. She could be pregnant. Now, there are obviously times when that's not the case. Also, there are times when stress causes you to miss a period and you're not pregnant. But a lot of times, like the times I think of is, I know that I've had missed periods before, but it's been like if I was running a lot or like exercising a lot, like that stress on your body can make you literally stop. But Gyokyo doesn't seem like the type that runs a lot. So I don't think that's the case. Or there could be something wrong with her, but if it was something like menopause, one, she seems way too young for menopause, and two, it could also be, like, usually menopause has symptoms like hot flashes and things like that. Now, she could have endometriosis, which is like, you know, cysts in your ovaries and things like that, but that usually leads to bleeding too, so she could very well be pregnant. The most opportune thing would be that she's probably pregnant. And so he's like, you need to go back to working in the rear palace. But MaoMao says, there's no chance I would run into that man whose name I can't even stand to hear. She hates Locken. Like, and I don't blame her. It's just, the angst is going to be so real, because I have a feeling Locken, like, the angst is so real. But yeah, Locken can't go back to the rear palace. So it does feel like Jinshi is watching out for her by sending her back there so that she doesn't have to deal with any of that. And she's like, oh, I get to taste more poison, so that's great. And then Suiren's like, oh, you're in such a good mood, aren't you? She's like, oh, no, not in a good mood at all. Nope, actually, I'm fine. She's like, oh, how unfortunate. She's like, I thought I'd finally found someone worth cracking the whip on. And then she like turns and MaoMao's like, nope, let's get out of here. Let's go back to the rear palace. Let's leave right now. So then, yeah, what is interesting is that she's back to tasting poisons. And she's like, there's no evidence yet, because, I mean, if she's just missing her first period, she's like 4 to 5 weeks along. You're not going to show at that range. But it is cute that we see the Emperor with his daughter. Like, that is sweet. She's like, I thought that during the events with the concubine Aduo, that he's just nothing more than a lewd middle-aged guy. But that doesn't seem to be the case. I do like the Emperor showing some affection for his daughter. That's really sweet. I like that. I mean, typically she's probably not going to gain the throne or anything, but she'll just be nobility. Good for her. So at least I can't believe Jinshi has a sister and he doesn't even get to play with her. That's so sad. So she's like, well, with concubine Aduo gone as a trusted advisor, that's something too. Aduo was also someone that the Emperor could confide in. Like, he has a daughter with Gyokyo, but Gyokyo doesn't seem like, she's an outsider. She's not from around here. So she's not exactly somebody that he can go to for advice, because Aduo was like raised there in the palace. She knows all the stuff he does, so she's a sounding board for him. Gyokyo doesn't know any of that. And Li Hua, she's not a political figure. So instead, I love the phrase, a quirky girl who could cause political issues. And I'm like, yes. That's so perfect. Yeah. So he's kind of like, you know, a little stuck. Someone he can't just ignore, but would be trouble if she birthed a child. Yeah. So basically, Gyokyo and Li Hua, they are our best bets right now. But Li Shu is too young, so that ain't gonna work. And Lowland seems a little bit politically insecure. So we don't have a baby with that. We don't have a baby with somebody we're not secure with. So that's not going to work. So it sounds like a headache. Then we go back to the house and they talk about at the brothel that one of the princesses is being bought out. And Lee Haku's like, what? No. our sweet Labrador is like, no. So then I'm very curious if, like, because it seems like it's setting up the same incident as with Locken and MaoMao's mother. But do we think Lee Haku would resort to something like what Locken did? I don't think so, but I don't know. So, y'all, this episode was amazing. Sui Ray is on the loose. Moriarty's still at large. MaoMao's away from her in the rear palace right now. Maybe not, though, because maybe not, though. And here's the thing. Sui Ray could pose as a eunuch and get into the rear palace. And if anybody reached their hand down there, they'd be like, oh, you ain't got a penis, so we're good. She could pose as a eunuch. And they wouldn't know. Son of a bitch. Anyway, I'm going to try to read more of The Last Eunuch of China before episode 21. But Thornapple, amazing episode. I've talked for an hour. So hopefully you found this interesting. But I'm so excited. I hope you all are too. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts down below. I'm sure you all have been waiting on your hands until we got to this point where things were confirmed or not. So thanks for being patient and not spoiling me. Yay. But in any case, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, bitches, I'll be back real soon with episode 21 of the Apothecary Diaries. Bye.